Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1194A, and today's date is February 2nd, 2017, and the title of the episode is Trump setting his sights on the Federal Reserve to expose it? Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, yesterday we talked about how Italy's youth unemployment was skyrocketing, hitting something like 40% or so. And we're seeing this in Greece, we're seeing it in France, we're seeing it in many different countries, even down in Latin America. I mean, Brazil, their unemployment, well, it hit as a record high, and it hit about 12.5%. And what we're seeing throughout the world right now is there are so many people that are unemployed at this point. Even here in the United States, even though we have the manipulated numbers and they're trying to convince us that the unemployment rate is 4.7%, we know the true unemployment is much higher than that. Actually, probably very close to about 23%, because you have to remember how all of this works. If you're not on an interview within the 4 weeks, you're just counted as you're no longer looking for a job. But what's very interesting about this, and we reported on this before, is that the initial jobless claims, well, before the election, as we know, they continually declined. Same thing with continuing claims. They declined all the way up to the point of the elections. Then after the elections, everything just switched. Continuing jobless claims started to rise. They started to surge. And what's very interesting is that ADP came out with their numbers saying that, hey, in January, there were 246,000 jobs that were added. This is incredible. So we have ADP on one hand saying that all these jobs were added. We have continuing claims moving up, initial jobless claims starting to creep up, and something is out of whack right now. Something doesn't make sense once again. And we can see that all of this does not make sense because all these numbers that they've been throwing at us for a very long time are completely manipulated. They've been skewed. The calculations changed to fit their narrative. And they continually do this. I mean, if we look at the student loan problem, and we discuss this, how the student loan problem is much bigger than anybody ever realized. Because the Department of Education, they released a memo admitting that repayment rates, remember this, on student loans have been grossly exaggerated. Data from the 99.8% of the schools across the country has been manipulated to cover up growing problems with the $1.3 trillion in outstanding student loans. Now, we talked about this before. So they lied to us all this time. They fixed the books to make us think that everything was fine. The new calculation shows that more than half of all borrowers from 1,000 different institutions have defaulted or not paid back a single dollar of their loans over the last 7 years. Now, this is a very big difference from what they've been telling us. This is a very big difference what they've been telling us about everything. And this calls into question any of the statistics that the government agencies are putting out. I mean, we should then question all of it. We should question GDP. We should question unemployment. We should question all of it and go in and check the calculations. See what they're doing. Because if they're lying about one thing, believe me, they're lying about a lot more. And what's very interesting about this is between 1995 and 2015, the average cost of a public four-year university skyrocketed by over 200%. And outstanding loans accounted for 45% of the government's financial assets. So we see right now that this whole thing has been a complete lie. Now, the scary part about this revelation is that almost 90% of outstanding private loans are co-signed by parents, making this an intergenerational problem. So their parents are going to be on the hook for all of this. And we've been lied to all along, telling us that everything is fine. And we've been looking at the numbers. We know it's not. Now, the corporate media is out there, and they're saying that U.S. productivity growth, well, it just surged up. It's incredible. But when we look back in time and we look at the overall picture, we see U.S. productivity growth has never been this low for this long. So, put it this way, if you're close to zero and it pops up to 0.5, I wouldn't really call that growth. Because if we go back in time, we go back to years like in 92, we were at 2.5. Go back to 2001, we were at 3. If we go back to 2004, we were at 4. And here we are hovering around 0.5. We had a little tick up, and they're making a really big deal about this. It's really not that big of a deal. Actually, it is awful. Because we aren't even close to increasing productivity here in the United States. Not even close. Now, in a past report, we talked about how Iran is going to be dumping the dollar. Now, they decided to do this a while ago, back in 2016. The Huffington Post had the article. I reported on it in a previous episode. Now they actually set a date. The change will take effect on March 21st. It will impact all official financial and foreign exchange reports. Now, they're using what Trump did as the excuse of why they're really dumping the dollar, which is completely unbelievable in the first case, because putting a temporary ban on these individual countries, which Iran is part of it, is a ridiculous reason to say we're dumping the dollar. Because think about what has been happening. The United States bombed all these countries. The United States replaced the governments in these countries. The United States invaded Syria. Iran has been fighting against the United States in Syria. And all of a sudden, because of this 90-day ban, they're getting all crazy about it. No, they had this plan from the beginning. They understand the dollar is dying, and they just needed some type of an excuse, and they saw what was going on, and they went for it. And we have to understand that the OPEC countries account for 42% of global oil production, holding 73% of the world's oil reserves. And the U.S. is the standard currency that is used for trade. Now, when countries start to dump the dollar, it means other countries don't need the dollar to purchase the oil. So Iran's going to say, you know something? You can buy our oil. We're going to use the euro. We're going to use the yuan, the ruble, everything but the dollar. So other countries are going to say, oh, I don't need this dollar. Those dollars come flooding back to the United States. As they come flooding back to the United States, we will see inflation. Now, will it happen the second it happens? No. It takes time. But we can see this is an ongoing issue throughout the Middle East, because all these countries where the people are taking back their countries, they're going to follow suit. They're not going to use the dollar. And we're going to see major problems here. Now, it looks like Trump is zooming in on the Fed right now. He has his sights set on the Fed. Vice Chairman of the Financial Services Committee. Well, he has lashed out at Janet Yellen, telling the Fed chair in no uncertain terms that despite the clear message delivered by President Trump in prioritizing America's interest in international negotiations, it appears that the Federal Reserve continues negotiating international regulatory standards for financial institutions among global bureaucrats in foreign lands without transparency, accountability, or the authority to do so. He then adds, the secretive structures of these international forums must also be reevaluated, because when the deals were negotiated, international standards were turned into domestic regulations that forced American firms of various sizes to substantially raise their capital requirements, leading to slower economic growth here in America. And the Fed, as we know, provided tens of billions in under-the-table rescue loans to foreign banks, covertly monetizing the entire system, and there is no transparency. And we can see that Trump at this point is looking at the Fed, and he's at the beginning stages. He's going to be going up against the central bank, which means, well, his life is then in danger, because the central banks, they have no allegiance to a country. They have no allegiance to a people. They don't care what country they're in as long as you're using their currency. And remember, their currency is created out of thin air. And they take this currency and they put nations into debt. They don't want to bankrupt them. They want to keep them at a certain level where they're able to buy their assets on pennies of the dollar. That's what they try to do. They just want to keep them barely afloat, keep them in that debt, then give them a little bit more debt while they cut programs, while people lose jobs. And this is what they do. And they do it to many, many, many countries because they have to keep spreading their debt out. And we can see right now Trump is looking at this and saying, okay, it's time. The Fed is not working for America. Well, it never was. Since 1913 when it came into existence, it never was. Andrew Jackson knew this. That's why he campaigned on getting rid of the Fed, keeping the central bank out of this country. That's why they created the Constitution that says the Treasury, well, they can coin the money. They don't have to depend on a central bank. What is the benefit of depending on a central bank? I mean, the Treasury can print up Treasury bonds. They can sure print up currency. And actually they can issue it without interest. But we can see right now that this central bank, the only reason they're in existence is because they give free money to politicians. They give free money to certain organizations. They keep everyone happy with this free money. If you ever notice that a lot of these government officials that go into office, most of them leave as millionaires. I mean, whoever takes a government job where you go in, yeah, you might have a couple bucks, you're a career politician, and you come out as a millionaire. Simply amazing. So we see what's happening at this point, and as we move forward here and the economy starts to break down, we can see that this is going to be a major problem because we have two scenarios going right now. The economy is deteriorating very, very quickly. And Trump is looking to reset everything. He understands that there's no way that this economy can move forward. I mean, there's just too much debt, too much corruption. There's no way the jobs can come back now. Too many regulations. It just can't happen. What he's doing, he's setting everything up for after the reset. Now, this reset is not going to be fun. There's going to be pain involved. Credit markets are going to freeze up. We're going to see high inflation. People are going to lose a lot of jobs. The stock market's going to come down, which is going to signal the whole entire thing. And people are going to think it's going to come, it just came out of left field, like, oh my God, all of a sudden Trump was in office, we have an economic problem. But this has been building all along. We've been watching all the bubbles. We've been watching what is happening. We've been looking at all the illusionary numbers that the government has been putting out. And just from the student loan numbers, which is a complete lie, we know that the rest of them are a complete lie because we've already looked at them. So this transition that we're going to go through is going to be on what Trump wants to do, or the central bank is going to try to take control and try to reset the system the way they want. So there's a battle going on between the people and the central bank system. And this is what we need to watch. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.